As you can see right now, we have no free generals, so I'm not going to be able to apply a general to this army I'm going to make. But if I go to the province view, I'll show you a nice little trick. If we go to, say, Khan, we can tick this button here, which means basically creates an infantry rally point. So, creates an infantry rally point. So essentially, any troops created will move to this spot, and if this button is ticked, they will group together to form one big army. So right now, any troops I make will come to Khan and join together. So this is nice when you're planning an actual army. You don't want to have to move everyone. They'll just go straight there, and we can tick that off later. And you can see in the little drop-down menu here, we have it under rally points, and you can see merge is on, which is the merging of the armies. So let's go to build army. And in this view is basically a tab that shows you all the different troops you can make depending on your research. And you'll notice there's a lot of selections here. But basically all these selections are is the region that you want to create them in. All of these are exactly the same. And you can see right now if I wanted I can just make all the infantry that I can possibly make in Europe or all in Africa. Or I can, select certain regions or provinces to create them from. So that lets you, if you want to create army in a certain place, say you don't want to make military in Asia if you want them in France, you want to make them in France. So that's very useful. But we'll just go through what all this means. And right now we can see this is the name of the infantry. So you see French infantry, and this one is African. This is the region where it will be created. Sorry, the province, not region. So you can see there the time it will take to create this troop. Now, as I said before, to create a regiment, that province needs at least 1,000 soldiers. You can see right here, it's all 1 point something K. And you can see right there, we can create 0 out of 1. Now, on the right-hand side, this shows the goods that you will need to create that troop. You can see right now, you need 16 small arms and 16 canned food per regiment. And you can see right there is the added up value of all of them put together. And it gives you an estimated cost of how much it's going to cost if it isn't in your stockpile already. You can see right now it's going to cost me probably around 17,000 to create these troops. So now I'll get into how to the best way to create an army. Now the different styles of troops we have are first irregulars, which are basically uncivilized infantry. So they are in every way worse than infantry, except they need less. Now the standard unit is infantry, as you can see here. Now, in an army, you want a mixture of infantry, cavalry of some sort, which includes these, and some form of artillery, which again could be these here. And the way it works is, infantry can only attack one line in front of them. So like I said before, you want your artillery on your second lines because it has support, which means it can attack 2 lines ahead. So all your infantry in a perfect army want to be on the front lines and none behind, because then you have the total of all your infantry attacking at once. So like we talked about before, we have a combat width of 29, but in actual battles this depends on both armies that are fighting, so this can change. But generally what you want to do is we'll say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 infantry in this army. Now the special thing about cavalry is that cavalry can attack diagonally, so you want these on your flanks. So normally you just want 2 different cavalry on your flanks. And cavalry is split into different types of cavalry. This is just generic cavalry. Think of it as uncivilized cavalry. Next we have dragoons, which are civilized cavalry, so they're better than cavalry in every single way. Then we have cuirassiers, which are the strongest cavalry, but they don't have the reconnaissance stat, which we'll go into in a second. And hussars are just the second most expensive sort of cavalry. And they are not quite as good as cuirassiers, but better than dragoons in early game. So these are your top of the top cavalry that have reconnaissance. But right now we're just going to go for normal cavalry. And then, like I said before, our back line we want full of artillery. So I'll just go for 5 artillery. So we have 5 infantry in the front line, with 2 cavalry on either side, and 5 artillery behind. Now we're going to go in what all these stats mean. And self-explanatory, attack and defense is how good they are attacking, how good they are defending. And if you go to irregulars, you can see there's quite a big improvement there. Discipline is how quickly their organization will go down. So you see 200% mean, 100% in everything, I believe, but there are technologies to change it. So discipline at 100% means they have, average discipline. Maneuver means how many. Basically, a maneuver above 1 means they can attack diagonally. Is all you need to know. So infantry can't, cavalry can. And you can see a maneuver 3 means instead of just attacking diagonally by 1, they can attack 2 to the side, and then forward mean 3 to the side. So higher maneuver is better in general for cavalry. What else we got here? Max speed, which is the max speed they will move on the map. You can see cavalry are much quicker. And supply consumption, like we talked about, is how many goods they need each day to keep them going. And you can see that's 140% of what it is normally. And some troops, as you can see, take less or more. Next, for cavalry, we have something that's very important that only cavalry and engineers have, which is reconnaissance. And reconnaissance affects how quickly you can capture a province. So having a troop with reconnaissance or siege, as you can see there, means that you will capture provinces quickly. And the differences between reconnaissance and siege is that siege will also affect if they have forts. Siege is much better at capturing provinces with forts and different levels of forts, whereas reconnaissance is quicker at capturing provinces without forts. But in the early game, most provinces will not have forts, or they will only have low levels of forts. So reconnaissance is better in the early game, and then moving to siege in the late game. So that is what reconnaissance does. And now we move on to support. And support, like I talked about before, means that they can attack from the second line. So a support of 200% means they do 200% of damage if they're on the second line. So you can see right now they do 1.5 attack if they're on the front line, which is nothing compared to infantry, as you can see. But in the second line, they do 3 damage. So would you rather have, just one line of 5, or a line of 5 and a line of 3? So support is also very important for your secondary line. And you can see right there, engineers have a small amount of support as well, but they would only do they would only do 1 attack. And it just continues for all of them. You can see cavalry have different levels of reconnaissance. And then finally, in the late game, aeroplanes act as the new artillery, as they have support, and armament work as the new engineers, as they have siege. And they also do a lot of attack, so they're good for mowing down infantry. And that is essentially the basics to creating a good army. And if I go back now, you can see that it's creating all my armies here. And if I play it, you can see that this is it collecting the goods it needs to create these troops. And if we just skip ahead a little bit, it can sometimes take a long time to get things such as cavalry, because at the time, being early game, a lot of goods you need to create a military aren't quite in mass production yet. So you may have to wait a long time to create some things. But you can see right now our army is being created. And if I zoom out a second, you can see it popping up on the map now and moving to our rally point. Now, an important thing to note is you can see organization here is very, very low. This is the green bar, and if this reaches 0, they will retreat. Let's just wait for this. And an important thing to note is that organization always starts very, very low, but quickly regains in home territory. So if you have an army in a foreign place, we'll say we're attacking Spain, and it has low organization, we may want to move it back and let it regain its organization before then sending it back. And you can see right now, this is our military. We'll wait for a couple more. We're waiting for the artillery. You can see we've got no leader, and we can't assign a leader. The strength is how many people are in it, which is also reflected there. Remember, each group of military we make is 3,000 men. This is supply points, and I'll talk about supply points a little bit now. But supply points are essentially each province has a supply limit. You can see here it's 40, 30, 40, 30. And this is how many number of troops it can supply, the strength, before it starts cutting down. So say if we had a supply limit of 40 here, but we had an army with 56 people in it. What would happen is, over time, that 56 would slowly go back down to 40. So you want to try and always keep the supply limit just above or at the level of people you have. Now, another thing to note with militaries is that when a military attacks, they won't lose a unit at a time. What will happen is everyone that is fighting will slowly lose numbers and lose strength. So the actual chance of one of these disappearing in a war is actually very slim, because what will normally happen is they will lose maybe 30,000 men and retreat, but there might just be like 200 left in each section. So you don't really have to worry about making new groups to reinforce. All you have to worry about is just not losing everyone at once. And that just about concludes the first episode of the military. And in the next episode, we're probably going to go into more about attacking and how, you know, the maths behind that works and how you can influence it. So thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the series. If you want to go back to the playlist, there'll be an annotation on screen right now. If you click that, it'll take you back to the playlist where you can select any other episode to watch from. If not, just wait till the end of the video and you'll be redirected to the next episode.